Hello
Please do.
everyone, thank you for joining us today. My name is Dr. Mahalingam P R, Senior Manager Pre-Sales at InApp, and I'm excited to welcome you all and kick off this session on continuous modernization, how evolving systems drive lasting ROI. So today's session is part of a broader conversation we have been having over the last 25 plus years at InApp, and that is regarding how modernization is treated not as a one-time effort, but as something which is much larger than that. So as I mentioned just a couple of seconds back, in the last 25 plus years, we have partnered with organizations in a variety of industries like manufacturing, construction, healthcare, fintech. In all these cases, we have helped them modernize their legacy systems of different shapes and sizes. So modernization is not a cookie cutter philosophy kind of a scenario. It is customized, it is specific for each domain and for each customer. But the pattern we see is always the same. That is what is common to all of them. And before we jump in further, please note that you can ask your questions at any point in time using the questions tab, which you can see on top. Now, companies that treat modernization as a strategy. So this is something which we have observed over the past 25 years. So if you are adopting it as a strategy and as a continuous process, you are going to be more relevant as far as the business is concerned over a longer period of time. Or in other words, if you talk in a business perspective, you have a better ROI for much longer. And you stay more agile, secure, efficient, and future ready. So I'm not the only person who is going to be talking today. So I'm joined today by my two incredible colleagues, Randall Brous, our Chief Client Officer, who brings a lot of business and technical perspective and strategic lens into modernization, and Parvathy Sukumaran, our lead for data science. And she helps companies build intelligence-driven modernization-ready systems, quite a lot from the AI perspective as well. So we have the right people for the job here. But before we jump in and start talking about these things, we would like to set a baseline. And let's quickly go for a poll on what is your biggest driver for modernization right now. So can we have the poll, please? So is your modernization effort driven by cost or innovation or compliance or UX? Great, we are seeing responses already. So keep it coming.
What would you select, Mahalingam?
Very interesting question. If I was owning my own business, I'd probably look at cost reduction first. Probably because I'm spending from my pocket.
Although innovation, new capabilities, maybe that makes you more revenue, so you don't need to reduce as many costs. I don't know. There's a good debate there.
There is always a balance which we need to strike. And probably I will say that I will innovate and I will let modernization take care of the cost.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah. So these are ways in which we can sometimes handle it.
Parvati probably selects compliance security. That's my guess.
I think a bit of everything, but if it was by priority, I would go with, as you said, compliance and security.
Mm-hmm.
Your gut feeling was right.
Shall we move on?
Yep. So we will close the poll. And it's a very interesting response which we got. Innovation did stand out as the top, followed by improved user experience and cost reduction. So probably I biased people a little bit, but yes, cost and UX had tied for second place and compliance came third. But let's see at the end of the webinar what people say. So let's move ahead. So as we proceed with this webinar, we will get insights on all four aspects which we talked about just now, or which we mentioned briefly just now, in different contexts, in different levels of depth. So I won't be just taking up the whole screen space here. I will hand it over to my colleagues. Randy, so what do you think? Why continuous?
Well, thanks, Mahalingam, and hello to everyone on the webinar today. Thank you for taking the time and joining us here for half hour or so. And I want to frame modernization from a business perspective. And I want to think about how for years in the past, in my experience, companies have treated the idea of modernization like it's a big project that they tackled only after a painful failure or an update from Microsoft or an update from some other vendor. And that's what that pushed them to make the next step in their modernization process. But in that rhythm, it worked really well when technology was moving relatively slowly, but it does not work anymore. Cloud platforms that we're using, AWS and Azure, are constantly updating things. Security threats are shifting extremely quickly, and your customers' expectations are moving faster than ever. And what we see with our customers is extremely consistent. The companies that stay reliable and adaptable, that treat modernization as an ongoing habit. It's not an event, it's not a single upgrade cycle, it is a habit that they do day in and day out. And there is a new accelerator in the mix. There's this crazy thing that some of you may have heard of, AI. AI has changed the pace of modernization and technology completely. It has compressed the idea of modernization cycles from years, something you might think about every other year, to months, to sometimes weeks, to even every single day. AI is driving change in the way technology is functioning. And it's forcing us to have stronger data practices and better architecture, because AI is only going to perform well when the foundation that it's running on is extremely healthy. So when modernization becomes a continuous habit, the ROI for your business is going to start to change as well. It's no longer just about saving money or speeding up a system. It becomes about predictability, readiness for change, avoiding outages, and protecting the experience for the people who rely on these systems every day. And I'm pretty sure, Parvathy, you've seen these kinds of things evolving as well. Agreed?
Yeah, thanks, Randy. That's a great question, actually, and a great observation. So from the AI and data side, we are seeing the same shift you described. It becomes very obvious the moment you try to make a system AI ready. In the past, modernization was a big project every few years. You would upgrade, stabilize, and then leave things alone. Once you bring in serious AI, whether it is predictive analytics, automation, or real-time decision support, that model doesn't work anymore. So you could quickly find the limits of the current stack. Data that's messy, scattered, systems that don't talk to each other well, architectures that struggle with the volume and speed AI needs. So you've probably seen this in your organization as well. Those moments where a new initiative hits a wall because underlying systems just aren't ready. So those new issues show up faster when a model goes into production. So there are these three things we see repeating. First, data readiness. A lot of modernization conversations now start with a simple question. Can we really trust the data this model is using? That pushes better pipelines, more real-time or event-driven flows, and stronger governance, not just because they are buzzwords. Without them, the AI simply doesn't work. Second, modernization is becoming incremental. Instead of ripping out everything, teams wrap legacy systems with APIs, stream the key events, add AI services on top. So those new pieces gradually become the core, and the old parts can be replaced in maybe smaller, safer steps. So third, the ROI becomes broader, as you said. When modernization is continuous, it's not just we saved money or the system is faster. You see fewer outages, smoother releases, better decisions, because AI is working now on timely and reliable data. So from where I sit, the AI and modernization are now inseparable. If you want AI to deliver real value, not just pilots and demos, you end up moving toward continuous modernization. So the organizations that accept that are the ones that stay resilient and competitive.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're seeing that equation continue to change. And like we said, the question is no longer limited to how much money we saved or how much faster a system runs. What matters really for organizations today is whether they can keep moving without disruption, whether teams can introduce changes into their production systems without slowing down their processes, and whether the system can hold up as these new tools and these new workflows come into play. And again, like I said earlier, they're coming into play in weeks, not months, not years. And that's a real key to whether that organization can do this without disruption. So your business leaders need to understand that, and they need a clear path forward that is not a cycle of big rewrites every few years because you have a giant ball of technical mud. They also want an experience that supports the people who depend on the system every day. So modernization becomes not a technical strategy, but a business strategy. It's not an individual technical project. It needs to be part of the overall business strategy. So it shifts the focus from fixing what's broken to strengthening what carries the business ahead. So I know we had a chance to sit down with one of our clients recently, and maybe Parvathy, you can set the stage for us on this business case that we want to share.
Sure. We've talked about continuous modernization in theory. So let's look at how it plays out in practice. Dynaflex is one of our clients who had to rethink how their systems, data, and day-to-day operations work together. So using automation and intelligent tooling as a part of their key shift. So let's hear about their modernization journey.
Dynaflex, they were established in 1965, and they were more of a traditional orthodontic lab just focused on handcrafted retainers and appliances. The biggest turning point for Dynaflex, and I guess the industry as a whole, would be when the shift happened from traditional impressions, in which a patient came in and you bit into an impression tray, and then you would mail that out to a lab, and then they would receive that. But then intraoral scanners came out, and the instantaneous nature of how you receive a digital scan versus a mailed-in impression tray kind of changed everything that was possible for the industry. So it immediately opened the door for us for faster designs, faster turnarounds, new types of appliances, and really scalability. And it was a level of repeatability that just wasn't achievable before. So we quickly kind of knew that the importance of developing digital workflows around that in tandem with the evolution would be very important for the success of our company. In orthodontics and in sleep dental medicine, even a fraction of a millimeter, greatly matters when you're producing at scale. So the challenge really was that many of the steps in our workflow were still very manual. And while our team, they're a very skilled team, those manual processes just didn't really scale at the volume that we were seeing. So as our volume increased, our risk of variability also increased with it. And so every manual step kind of introduced an opportunity for an inconsistency or something to be wrong. And then when you have thousands of cases, it becomes quite a bottleneck. And that's, both speed and quality. And so now we're in this world where instantaneous data is deliverable and receivable. Speed and quality both need to be at the forefront of what we're doing. With InApp, we've developed several automation tools based upon very specific functions within our digital workflow that sort of speed up each one of those, greatly to a point to where we can now focus on, the more creative process and kind of allow the tedium and repetitive things to be handled automatically. And it's really helping us even for future to scale beyond that. I guess we had to have a sort of a mindset shift on how we were thinking about processes, because, how we've always dealt with was when there was a problem, you reach out, find a solution. But with the sort of evolution in the digital world and the orthodontic field, those two kind of run parallel. And so as technology grows, our ability to parallel grow with technology is there as well. So it really isn't a one-time capital project, and that industry just moves too quickly. So yeah, new treatments will approach, new materials, and even new digital tools. I mean, we're seeing new things every day from across the board, even from specific orthodontist offices, how they're sending us. There's always a new scanner, always something new. When I first started here, we had maybe 2 small 3D printers, and we were pushing out maybe 150 to 200 models a week. Since then, we've been growing more rapidly and rapidly and rapidly. And with the available technologies and our partnerships with InApp and ability to handle workflows and just all of the pieces in between, we're now pushing out maybe 4,000 to 5,000 models a week. And so our ability to scale, there's no stopping it. And it's nice to have a team like InApp that we're working hand in hand with.
So what you just heard from Brent really captures the core challenges. Dynaflex had the talent, but manual workflows just don't scale. And as volume grew, so did the bottlenecks. They needed to match the speed of digital scans without losing precision. When you're handling thousands of such cases, every manual step is a potential failure point. So these are classic signs you need to modernize, but a one-time fix won't cut it. The tech, as he mentioned, scanners, materials, protocols, changes too fast. As Brent said, this isn't just a capital project anymore. It's a shift to treating modernization as a continuous discipline and not as a finish line. And that's exactly what the shift that we've been talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And what stood out to me, even early on when our first conversations with the Dynaflex team, was, as you pointed out, that this could not be treated as a one-time fix. Their clients' technologies are changing so fast that they need to be able to keep up with that. And their entire workflow was being reshaped by these digital scans, faster data, rising production volume. And so the goal was not just to patch this one-time problem. They had to make a business shift. The goal was to build a foundation that could keep evolving as their industry evolved. Things they don't have control over are evolving outside of their business, and they need to be ready to adapt to those things. So we approached this in stages. We started by improving how their digital data moved through the workflow so they didn't run into delays or inconsistencies as the volume increased. And then from there, we focused on reducing the number of manual steps that created bottlenecks in their production workflow. So each automation we added was intended to remove a point of friction and give their technicians more room to focus on the skilled work instead of on that repetitive task, that repetitive thing they were doing over and over and over again. And then after that, we worked on strengthening the surrounding processes so that updates, refinements, and new tools could be introduced without slowing down the operation. So the outcome was not only more speed, it was a workflow that could scale, as he said, from a few hundred models a week to several thousand without losing quality, because obviously quality is very important for something that your customers are going to be putting in their mouth and wearing every day. So more importantly, it gave them a system that can continue to adapt as new scanners, materials, and digital tools show up in this market.
If I may add to that, the work hasn't stopped with what you have just seen, and we are still collaborating with the Dynaflex team to refine the automation that we did, add intelligent checks, and ensure that the system scales smoothly. So we're also streamlining how new tools are getting integrated. So this is a continuous modernization in action, making small, high-impact updates to keep the system future-ready. So rather than waiting for a massive overhaul.
Well said, well said. And this is a pattern we're now seeing across multiple industries.
Yeah, and that's a very powerful example. But I would add one aspect to that, wherein we talked about having small, high-impact updates and all. But in all these cases, one thing we need to remember is that these are all informed updates. That is, they do have the data to support the decisions. They do have the data to support their plans, and that democratization kind of had a pretty good impact on how they decide how to modernize. So once we enter that democratized data and compute era, and now it is available for everyone. We need to start looking at how organizations can build this as a mindset into their culture. So even if you have everything in front of you, unless you decide that you need to look at the data, you need to look at the processes, identify all these bottlenecks or possibilities, and implement modernization on top of that. There is no point in just having everything in front of you. So, Randy, since you have been a veteran in the industry for quite a while, can you give us some insights on how an organization can probably operationalize this continuous modernization approach? So what is the strategic shift they need to have? What is the cultural shift, and what is the entire architectural shift they need to consider or they need to account for?
It takes cultural shift first. You can't go strategy or operational or architectural until you have a business level cultural shift. Your company has to be ready to treat this product, this idea of continuous modernization, the same way that you integrate, sales, marketing, security, DevOps. It becomes a cultural shift, and it needs steady attention. It can't wait for the next budget cycle or the next problem to surface. It needs to be something that your teams expect change constantly and design for it. And the rest of the organization can then move without disruption. They understand that we're going to be pushing out changes on a regular basis all the time. And that mindset makes it easier to improve your architecture, adopt the new tools we've been talking about, and keeping the system aligned with where that business is going.
I'll add my thoughts on how AI facilitates continuous modernization, Mahalingam. From what I have seen, the use of AI almost forces continuous modernization. Keeping an AI system healthy isn't a deploy and forget thing. It needs ongoing attention. So that means constantly refining pipelines, retraining your models, updating user feedback loops, and so on. So the upside is that AI becomes a kind of early warning system. If a model starts drifting or a new data source shows up or a workflow changes, you see very quickly where the foundation needs work. And you can make targeted improvements instead of waiting for this big rewrite. So culturally, where teams commit to AI in production, they are also committing to this ongoing cycles of learning and adjustment. So that's where I think AI and continuous modernization really reinforce each other.
Yeah, I think both of you are spot on that. So it starts with culture, wherein people have to be ready to understand what needs to be improved and get ready to embrace that change. And at the same time, you need to strategically move in such a direction that you know what you're going to do and you know what outcomes you want to expect. But in order to implement all of these, you need the engineering standpoint as well, wherein the way we do that is different when it comes to the traditional Big Bang modernization and the continuous modernization. So the traditional Big Bang modernization is going to be a long duration or long timeline, a heavy impact approach, wherein that impact comes with its own risk as well as cost. And you have a tendency to move from one system to the other and take time to adapt to that, which kind of causes a longer downtime window. So that is not always recommended for a highly active business. And since we push entire blocks of updates at that time, they could quickly run obsolete within a few years because the entire block was built together in that point in time. But when it comes to continuous modernization as an architectural decision, we build small incremental updates. So we replace one piece at a time with very predictable outcomes and very predictable costs, because we are not handling a year worth of work together. We may be taking it a couple of sprints, a month, or probably a couple of months at a time. So we know what's going to happen, and that adds value much faster, for the simple reason being we know what's happening. Even if the user doesn't, a person sitting in the company will understand that this is delivering me value much better because I'm getting work done faster. Even that is a value add. And we have very minimal downtime because 90% of the system is still the same. We are not touching anything there. Only the 10% changes, and it seamlessly fits into the others like a glove. And they are all future ready because the next 10% of change could be actually on a even better framework or an even better architecture that actually fits the others, and the system is not obsolete together. So when modernization becomes a habit and not an event, good things happen. like organizations become adaptive. They adapt to changes better, they are more agile. And that adaptability is the real ROI, because you invest your strategy, your culture, and your mindset into that, and you reap the benefits of being current and agile. So with that, I would like to thank Randy and Parvati. It's been very insightful. And since we have a few minutes left, probably we'll take a couple of audience questions before we come to a close. I think we have one already. Yeah. So we have one question even before I asked for questions. So let's take it. So the question is very simple. We have a lot of mission critical legacy systems that we can't just turn off. So that's something which we see all across. So how do you recommend balancing the need of continuous modernization with the risk of disrupting what's already working? So
Yeah.
Randy, would you like to start on it from a business perspective?
I mean, it's a very common question we hear. Obviously, your legacy system that's mission critical. You can't turn it off to work on it. You've got to be able to keep going, and it's completely valid. The good news is that continuous modernization, it's not about shutting down things and starting over. It's actually the opposite. It's you identify the areas where you can add value without touching the core. Maybe it's how data flows in and out or how the users interact with the system. And you're going to start there and prove the value and then expand gradually and find small places that you can work on. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and from the AI side too, like you don't have to rewrite the whole legacy system from the day one. You can wrap your AI changes around the legacy system, just pull in the data, just required for the new intelligence. You can build AI on top of that. So the legacy system keep running as it is, and now you have a layer of forecasting or anomaly detection or a recommendation on top of that. So once that work starts working, you can start replacing your legacy parts over time.
And if I put my nerd glasses on, there is an architectural pattern which actually talks about the same thing. Yeah, I do have my glasses here, so just to let you
Okay,
know.
good.
So we have patterns like the strangler fig pattern, wherein we just decouple the entire system into pieces and start replacing one by one, which is exactly what we were talking about for the past 20 plus minutes. And you can gradually replace the pieces one at a time and still ensure that the system is stable and working without any business disruptions. And the more your components are isolated, obviously the safer and easier it is to move to the next modern piece of that entire puzzle. So it will be more or less like putting a puzzle together, wherein you just make sure it fits into this correct slot. So there are architectural systems which already do that, but that's something which we can surely take. As we come to a close, thank you everyone who joined us today. It's been a pleasure meeting all of you. And if you would like help evaluating where your current system is and how you can adapt yourself into continuous modernization philosophies and practices, just feel free to reach out and our team will be happy to connect with you further. So have a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing all of you in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.